Hello and welcome to PoliticOly. This is episode 22 and it's a bit of a midweek update bonus episode today. I typically do shows on Sundays. They go up at 1 p.m., but there's so much going on and I had over a full page of links and notes for the show already by Wednesday. So I thought I'd get in a quick episode here. I'll focus on Olympia issues. And that way I can go more in depth on some other topics and news on Sunday. So getting into it, I'll just go ahead and call this little mini episode a love letter to my friend, Olympia City Councilor Clark Gilman. And that is, of course, a play on words. As you can see here, he made a post yesterday, the 29th, called a love letter to my friend dressed in black. And I just wanted to go ahead and share some thoughts and some responses I had to that. So just to set up the context here, though, in Olympia, there's been continued uprisings for Black Lives Matter and against police brutality and for defunding the police and accountability for local injustices that have happened that there's been no justice for. And so on. And there's been, in response from the city, just chemical attacks and police brutality. And the city council, first of all, tried to ban the use of chemical weapons against protesters and then took it back. And all of them, except for Renata Rollins, voted to allow the police to use the chemical weapons. And here we are, and they've continued to escalate. And as you can see, if you watch my episode from last Sunday, I've got a photo of some of the remnants of munitions that they've been using, and I talk more about some of the recent instances of police violence here in Olympia and the surrounding region. So that's the backdrop. And Clark Gilman is basically ran as a DSA candidate, a people's candidate. And he was known for showing up to protests, for being accessible, for listening, for being someone you could talk to. He's got a union background and speaks like a working class candidate and so on. But what we've seen is, while he's in office, is that he's silent on police brutality generally. And otherwise seems sort of defensive, and as you'll see here, and we'll go into my feelings as we move along this piece. So again, this is Olympia City Councilor Clark Gilman. Quote, I recently received a Facebook message from one of the people breaking windows and spray painting buildings downtown Olympia. This is someone I've talked with at meetings, ridden the bus with, a part of our town and my world. They asked me why I wasn't joining them in the streets and if I really believed that working inside of the system as a council member could create any positive change. Here's my response to my friend dressed all in black and draped in homemade armor. I love you. I want your voice to be heard. And I'll be honest, I go to sleep afraid that you might die each night, that I hear the airplanes circle and the sirens blare. You and I agree that we want all people to be liberated from the threat of state-sponsored violence, that we want all people to have an opportunity to have their needs met, to feel safe, and to have a feeling of belonging. Yes, I do believe that working inside the system, coupled with outside pressure on the system, can and will create positive social change. I have great hope for a more just and humane world. It breaks my heart that you don't share that hope. I'm genuinely surprised that you've decided anonymously smashing storefronts is the most powerful action available to you. End quote. Or rather, pause at least. So, note that Clark calls this piece a love letter and then proceeds to dismiss the message of the person he claims to love and instead condemns supposed violence against inanimate objects while saying nothing about the actual violence committed by the OPD under Clark Gilman's oversight as a city councilor. I don't know what was said between this person and Clark, but I somehow doubt their message to him was, I have no hope for a more just and humane world. In fact, Clark says the person simply asked him if he really thought working within the system would enable that change. In my opinion, this theoretical or actual protester would be more likely is more likely to believe that a better, more just world is possible, and that the disagreement between them was actually between the strategy and methods toward getting there. I'll continue. Quote, yes, as Trevor Noah put so eloquently, the social contract is broken. Our expectations for safety and opportunity do not extend equally to Black people. But the African American people I've been learning from are asking to be included in the social contract, not to abolish our social contract. And I'll pause the quote there. What is he talking about there with the social contract? Protesters are talking about abolishing the police brutality, and white supremacy. Nobody's out there running around shouting, abolish the social contract, right? Like, the folks are just trying to tell people like Clark that the police are the ones violating the social contract, not the other way around. And he doesn't appear to hear that though, and continues. And I'll skip ahead just a little bit. I want to live in a workplace where everyone's respected. Blah 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 blah. I'm going to skip ahead. I want you to fix what you broke. He's lecturing this theoretical protester here and asking them to repair the harm that they've done. So again, there are zero protesters out there shouting, freedom from all responsibility. That's just not a thing. He's twisting it again. So people are asking for a system where we don't have a profession of people called police that are above the law and exempt from responsibility for their actions. So, and then he goes on to ask the protesters to fix things they've broken, but yet again, he doesn't call for the police to do anything to take responsibility for the harm that they've caused. So it's a matter of framing and what he's chosen to focus on. And I'll continue here. Talks about nonviolence, mentions John Lewis. I'll continue. I'll move ahead though, and the link is below if you want to read the entire message, but I'll just skip ahead a little bit. So he has a section here called Black Lives Matter, Let Black Voices Lead. Let's see. So I'm going to skip down here. Quote, I feel it is very important that City Council and the Olympia executive team are together as a group to listen to African American people talk to us about race. This helps me ground my council actions in the lived experience of those who bear the brunt of the racist notion that white people are superior. We began last Thursday as we listened to 3 people talk to us about race and the justice system. For the next 3 Thursday evenings, we will continue with race and economic opportunity, race and the healthcare system, and race and education. There's room for you to join us. As an aside here, there's links, and I will post that below, and I'll come back to that in a second. I'll continue with the quote here. On the section ending police brutality. Quote, our community is united in our collective agony over watching the biased actions of police officers from across the nation directly inflict brutal punishment, even murder, on people often for minor transgressions. We are united in the belief that we can move beyond the protections offered in the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, that we can build on all the previous half measures toward racial justice and take another step forwards toward a society that recognizes only one race, the human race. I agree that we should prioritize the most compassionate and least potentially violent public safety response to a person in crisis. While defund the police is an easy catchphrase, it is possible that it will be more expensive to have a fair and compassionate approach to people in crisis and times of necessity. We have already begun on this path. These compassionate justice interventions are funded by grants in the voter-approved public safety levy. We can't rely on grants to sustain these efforts, and they are important efforts to sustain. End quote for now. And defund the police isn't just a catchphrase. It's a budgetary priority. He explains that solving the underlying issues in society may cost more money. Well, no kidding. We thought of that too. That's why we need to take some of the money that's tied up in the police budgets. And that's why people are saying defund the police. Um, he doesn't seem to quite get that here. No one is saying we can solve all our problems with just the money we take from the police budgets either, but we have to take as much as we possibly can because that's a lot of resources we can use more effectively right now. I'll continue for a moment. So he skims through some of these methods here: Familiar Faces Program, Crisis Response Unit, Olympia Community Court, and hiring a police auditor. And so those are good. Those are good efforts. Those are fine programs, but they are tiny in scale. The the police auditor position is, I believe I saw that was a $30,000 a year budgetary item off the top of my head. So take that, look that up if you're interested. But anyway, the point is, it's not even one FTE, and some of these other programs are also minimally funded, and or also crisis response unit is, I believe, within the police department. So. So these are fine programs, but you just dismissed defunding the police as just a catchphrase, and then you listed organizations and projects that could really do a lot of good work if they were given any real portion of the police budget. Anyway, I will continue here with his conclusion. Quote, "There's so much more. Notions of the superiority of white people has pervaded our education, healthcare, legal system, employment, access to food, access to housing. As a labor organizer, I've seen firsthand the power of dividing working people by artificial constructs like race, ethnicity, and immigration. We are all humans, and when working people stand together, we're most powerful. This is a long road, but we're following in the footsteps of those who came before and trod a footpath into a road. Their struggles and their victories are our legacy to maintain and build upon. I believe there is reason for hope and continued struggle. Be safe out there. Don't die on the streets tonight. Log in to watch the town hall tomorrow. We have a long road ahead of us. Time is short, and we need to keep moving." And end quote. And again, this was posted yesterday. So when he says town hall tomorrow, that's today. And again, I'll go back to that. So let's see. Don't die on the streets tonight. How would they die, Clark? Would they just mysteriously pass away of natural causes if they were out after dark? Is that what's happening? No. They're in danger because of police brutality, which you sort of mention in passing in a general sense that you're against police brutality somewhere in the middle of the piece, and then you completely forget that in the rest of your analysis. So, yes, people ought to tune into these town halls and participate in government by giving public comment and so on. And the rest of the positive part of your message, people should do those things, absolutely. But people have done that for years, decades, centuries. And the old ways of trying to address the crisis of white supremacy have failed. City hall meetings haven't changed anything. Community sessions haven't changed anything. Well, thank you, Clark, for writing and posting this so we can have this discussion. I disagree with the focus of your piece, your framing, and your conclusions, but I say all of this respectfully, and I hope you do take the time to consider the problems with taking the side of the police in all this. I say this as someone who has spent a lifetime peacefully protesting myself. I've never broken a window or done any other type of property damage. It's not my way, not my strategy. However, I also don't spend my time, my energy, and my platform condemning those who do, instead of maintaining perspective with regard to the disproportionate violence of the state and of capitalism. I just wanted to show you the page where you can find the information Clark was talking about with regard to the upcoming meetings in Olympia and also the videos from ones that have already happened. Click view recording. You can register for the upcoming ones. They have flyers, and there's also more links and information on there as well. And that link is below. And one quick note on that, I have heard from a Facebook comment that basically these meetings are structured as more of a lecture. They talk to you and you listen, and they might have a short question and answer session at the end, but they pre-select those questions and they're not going to pick ones that are too confrontational in their view. So keep that in mind. But they can be informational and you can learn something about where the city is at on some of these things. So, but here we have a very different sort of response from anti-fascist activist and former chair of Thurston County Democrats, Boudicca Walsh. Quote, having been involved in the Democratic Party during the elections of Lisa Parchley Clark Gilman, I feel we have failed as a party to hold candidates accountable to the people they represent and to support candidates that would not vote for police brutality. Specifically, the party on the city and county level failed to support Deborah Lee, who would most vehemently not ever have voted for this exception to allow war crimes on peaceful protesters. I have a lot of personal bleep that I'm working on for my individual relationships and so on. I'll skip ahead. Effectively ushering in these cynical liberal politicians who allow the Olympia police to actively and materially harm its people. The spirit of compromise with which I wanted to work with the party to affect its material assets towards justice and change in the community were recuperated into the paradigm. Many had a hand in this effect, and I can't speak for all of them, but for my end, I feel like I've played a part in this. I actively pray that you feel the weight and consequences of this too. You allowed this. You made the way for this. The only way you could possibly correct this is to defund the Olympia Police Department. There's no reforming these war criminals. And if you don't defund the OPD, replace it with actual social programs that are restorative and rehabilitative. If you don't do these things, then you are complicit with the ones who fired the tear gas canisters. You are complicit with state-sanctioned violence. You are complicit with human rights abuses. Gassing protesters is not progressive, and it is frauds who would support this and call themselves such. And if you won't defund the OPD, then resign and allow someone else in who will. And Deborah Cano-Lee, who Boudicca was talking about in the piece, responded, quote, my campaign was speaking of defunding the police back in 2017, only not in those terms. I spoke about shifting fiscal priorities that allocate city funds to create a city social and human services department and civil rights department. I proposed to shift funding priorities from building a militant police force that is also expected to be social workers and mental health providers, etc., to investing in our community members by creating these departments that would serve, protect, and build a stronger and healthier community. My platform was civil rights, social and environmental justice, harming and violating the rights of citizens goes against everything I stand for and fight for in my decades of activism. And I definitely would have continued that activism in City Hall. And I replied to that, hope you're planning your next campaign right now. I humbly suggest you consider running independent of the Democratic Party. And Deborah Lee replied, quote, thank you, but I don't know about that. What I do know is we need to stop electing politicians and start electing activists. Activists with proven track records. Activists are deeply knowledgeable and experienced in the complexities of our government systems. We navigate these systems in our work every day as we fight to protect the rights of our people. We understand the processes of drafting, initiating, and passing laws because we are at the table lobbying for new or changed laws and policies that protect and benefit all. We are an intrinsic part of the system, only our role is resisting the oppressive systems that harm our people, not obliging to or enacting it. So next year, when we hear these politicians telling us they are the best people to represent us because they have the knowledge and experience, remember, so do activists. which is an excellent reminder from Deborah Lee. So thank you for that. I supported Deborah Lee's campaign, by the way, and agree with Boudicca's comments as well. So, actually, before I move on, I want to talk about something I don't have a graphic for. So, just really quick, a mention. I wanted to pass along a warning to folks. I've seen posts about, two posts now about fake police officers pulling people over in an old Crown Vic cruiser wearing a Seattle police uniform. And I don't know what's going on with that or what the veracity of those claims are or what, but just please be aware and be safe. If someone's pulling you over and you suspect they may not be who they say they are, or even if you just aren't sure and you just want to be safe, remember you have the right to continue driving until you are at a safe location or the nearest police station. So, so do that, and if you're not sure, if you're scared. So, yeah, just something to be aware of. And I'll report more on this in the future if I get more concrete information about those incidents. So, but moving on to what's on the screen, this is a Thurston County News release from today, July 30th, from Thurston County Health Officer Dr. Demiana Abdelmalek, who released this letter basically saying that Thurston County has continued seeing cases, and so they're not recommending that the local public schools open for the fall term. And from what I've seen from the school districts is they are following this recommendation and not opening the schools in the fall. So we don't have all the details on what that's going to be like. I was hoping that we would hear something like this, and there may have been something from the governor today too, but I haven't listened to his address from this afternoon yet. So, maybe I'm talking about this and it's also statewide. I don't know. I'm gonna have to report back on that on Sunday. But I honestly didn't know if they were going to do it. It seemed clear to me that the schools didn't have the capacity to properly distance and support staff. But it seemed like they might open them anyway. But so I'm happy to see this statement. So thank you to Health Officer Abdelmalek, and you can read the full statement at the link below. I was going to share this fundraiser to ask folks to contribute, but it met its goal in just 2 hours yesterday, and then blew past it for local organizer Simeon, who has been organizing a ton of events here in Olympia, and including one I'll mention here in a minute. So just thank you to the community for showing up to support a local organizer in need. And I'll move on to this one. This is a fundraising campaign that has not yet met its goal. It's at 1269 out of 2500. And this is for John, a local Black activist who's been active in the protests here. And they actually lost housing because of the community youth services shelter, youth shelter, has closed temporarily due to a COVID-19 related case. And so the folks that were relying on the community youth services shelter called Rosie's Place need help with housing. So and John is one of them, and he's a local Black activist who's been, as you can see here in the description, played a critical role in the BLM movement. He quote, he has been out for events almost every night downtown. So yeah, chip into that if you can, and let's help that one hit its goal as well. And this is an article about the youth center shelter closing, and I will link to that as well if you want more information about that. So that is terrible news for other folks as well. So if you can figure out how they need help as well, that would be a good community organization to support. So let's take a look at another fundraiser, and this one The title is Help Fix Jackys Window After Nazis Threw Rocks, and it just needs about 150 left. So if you can contribute a few bucks to help that one out. And from the description, quote, I'm making this GoFundMe for a friend and community member named Jackie. Jackie's a Mexican organizer local to Olympia. She's involved in every affinity group or org in Olympia, helping our communities fight racism, intolerance, and police brutality. Jackie's very involved with the movement and out literally every day and night with us. So, anyway, when her windows were broken by the local right-wing militia bros, which you can read about if you read that full description in the link. So, something to chip into if you can. It's good for us all to rally around local community members when they get targeted by these hate groups. So here's a Black Lives Matter rally tomorrow in West Olympia. Moving on to a few upcoming events here, and I'm just going to wrap up this midweek update episode here in a couple of minutes. So let's get out some upcoming events, and then I'll continue with the show on Sunday. So this one again is tomorrow in West Olympia, gathering at 4:30 at Harrison and Division by Grocery Outlet. Note, this is hosted by Simeon, who we saw the fundraiser for earlier, so still out doing the work. So thank you to Simeon for your organizing, by the way. And I'll continue. This one is called Rally for Prisoners. This is also tomorrow, Friday, July 31st. They are meeting at the Capitol at 1 p.m. and marching at 1:30. And I'm sharing this post from Peter Bomer, a local professor and author and activist. So thanks for sharing that, Peter, and for all of your work in the community. This I just wanted to share. This is for an update on the Chaplin Thompson family. You can check out this interview Andre and their mom Crystal did recently on LA Talk Radio. They talk about their experience being traumatized by the Olympia Police Department and their continuing experience beyond that event as well. So you can go to the link below to listen to that interview. That's a good one. So thanks to LA Talk Radio for having Andre and Crystal on. And oh yeah, also I'll put a link below to the donation page so you can chip in as well. They have, I believe, they're fundraising for a new wheelchair for Bryson, something like that. And so they have a fundraiser going on, and that's I'll link below. So this is the next one going on Sunday, August 2nd, from 2 to 5 p.m. And they are meeting at Woodruff Park, which is on the west side by Garfield Elementary there on Harrison. And they are calling this Abolition, Reparations, and Amnesty. And lovely flyer there. And so this is in response to the horror of the people unleashed against the people, rather, in Portland, and so on. And there's also been a call out for if you're interested in joining like a Wall of Moms type of group in Olympia, or like another affinity group of like-minded folks to contribute to the protests in your own way and stand up against police brutality. You can meet with folks here at this event and connect with the organizer to learn more about how to do that. So August 3rd, this one is a Green Party virtual phone bank. The Green Party of South Puget Sound has endorsed 3 candidates in this primary, and that is Joshua Collins, Johnny Mead, and Sharonda Amamilo. Joshua Collins and Johnny I've had interviews with on PoliticOly, so you can look that up, check out those interviews. I endorse both of them as well, and I did not know that they had endorsed Sharonda Amamilo. So, and she's running for county Superior Court judge. So, so learn more about that. You can find it on the link, and they're going to have like a meeting on Jitsi, which is just like Zoom basically. That's really easy, and they'll walk you through how how to do that if you want to support the Green Party candidates in this primary. One more thing about the primary, POWER, which stands for Parents Organizing for Welfare and Economic Rights. That's a nonprofit downtown, and they have a primary voter roundtable going on August 3rd as well. So if you want more information on what those candidates are going to do for working families and so on, that would be a good one to plug into that conversation. And I'll just wrap up here with a brief poem. And this one was written by local organizer and activist Lisa Ganser and published in the Po People's Survival Guide through COVID-19 and the Virus of Poverty. And you can find a link to that publication to the store where you can get that publication below. And it's titled Keep Breathing for the Love of All Poverty Scholars. I often say, like my friend Vida E., keep breathing. And now those words have taken on a new verb, an active meaning, when I'm feeling that clunk and junk in my sinuses and chest amidst the waves of fatigue and pain and shortness of breath. Formerly unhoused, with a roof over my hissing chest, Elecampane mixes with albuterol and hot steams, Mucinex, elixirs and antibiotics, Rosalinda's elderberry, and the champagne of Booch, Oly magic. I am a chest and back percussionist. Everything but testing positive for COVID-19, and 3 times over as high risk. Getting upright as long as I can, and mostly it's no choice but rest. I'm sending love and every best wish and breath that we all, for the love of all poverty scholars, keep breathing. And again, that was by Lisa Ganser. And there is a link to the poorpress.net store page where you can take a look at that publication. So I appreciate everyone tuning in. I don't always do these midweek updates, but just there's so much going on. So I threw in some focused Olympia content here. Hope you appreciate and enjoy, and appreciate all of the views and comments. So please feel free to comment and suggest or question or add a link or anything like that below. If you want a link to a flyer for an event or anything you want me to share. Typically the show is Sundays at 1 p.m. So thanks to you all, and love and peace and good night.